Ah,
Absolutely love it. I don't have to say it anymore. Welcome everybody to this edition of Beers with Bill, or should we say Beers and Cars with Dale Winn, home brewer, nano brewer in Nova Scotia. Dale, welcome to Beers with Bill.
hey, how's it going, guys?
You had that. In fairness, Dale wanted me to go to his place, which wasn't going to fly today because I've got company at the cabin. And in fairness, Dale tried to get his beer to me yesterday, but I just couldn't make it work in timing for myself.
He ran out of gas, which is why he's at the pump.
Yeah. It's a long push from where I was, all right? So what beer did you want to start with, Dale?
So the beer that I'm actually starting with tonight is one that I kind of brewed for summer. It's called Lawnmower Man. It's a cream ale. This one here is actually a single malt. So basically, this one was brewed with Superior Pilsen malt. I used Technang hops for bittering. But what I did was, for aroma as well as a little bit of uncouthness to cream ale, I dry hopped with some brand new hop. It's a Triumph. It came out in 2018. And what I was gunning for on that was, because of the chemical makeup of the hop, it was more berry aroma. Like, I mean, a lot of people, today they're in that citrus punch, from mainstream hops. But I wanted something that was kind of like a berry, like a summer after berry feel to it. So that's kind of what I ended up doing. And so that's this guy here, nice and clear. It's sitting low at 4%, so it's definitely a summer pounder. Yeah, it turned out quite well. It's got that clean dryness to it that you would expect from kind of like cream ale, but like I said, it is a bit off the rails and uncouth, as I did dry hop it. So it's got that aroma punch to it, and it did come out and give a nice berry taste to it.
So when did you get into home brewing, Dale?
It's actually kind of funny. I first originally got into making wine, and I'm not talking kits. Like, I smashed the shit out of my own fruit and everything else. And I kind of always wanted to get into brewing, but a couple of people that I know did it said it was daunting and hard. But it's just been a little over a year now, roughly, that started getting everything into it. And of course, rather than doing the easy route and going extracts or anything like that, just hit it hard, full grain right off the bat.
So what's your favorite style right now to brew?
Style to brew. Okay. Yes. They're all unique. I got to be honest. My friend and I, who brews with me, basically the style that I enjoy, I should say, the most is the ones that I honestly create from scratch. So there's a lot of recipes now that I've started doing where I create from scratch. And where that becomes fun and interesting is, it's a learning curve, right? When you have a laid out recipe, how things are supposed to come out, how things are supposed to be in the end. I mean, even if you look online, they'll have pictures of the beer or, the food or whatever it is you're making that you're following. But when you do your own, you're in the brick and mortar store even, and you're taking like bits of the grain and you're chewing on it to see what flavor you get, and you start writing notes. And at first when you're doing it, you might think you're a little crazy, but yeah, I am. But you start to kind of get into it, that way, and you get the flavors and you kind of figure out what you think you're going to do. And that's what's exciting to me, is it's just the whole, how is this going to turn out? You know, like, is it going to turn out the way I think it's going to? And, you know, when you got a friend with you too, and they're sitting there and, you know, you got that tea aroma smell going on and you're brewing away, and they're just like, I don't know if this is going to turn out. And it's like, ah, come on, we got to have faith. It's going to rock. We're going to do it.
Mike has an interesting question. He wanted to know how you got that beer so clear. Was it a clarifying agent, or did you do something else like lagering the heck out of it?
Basically, cold crashed it, but I had to cold crash it in the keg. So I've got a kegerator, and what I did was, at first, it wasn't all too clear. I didn't use any clarifying agents really, other than Irish moss, because I just wanted to drop the solids. But from the most point, it was just kegging it and leaving it in the fridge for a while.
Well,
Is Bill there?
I think we got him back.
Am I there? I don't know.
You're good.
I'm good now.
Yes,
I'm actually
sir.
thinking of switching to my phone. Is that better, David?
Yeah, I think you're good. Coming in clear.
This isn't going to help me any, is it?
Oh, you got to mute somewhere.
Now, Dale, can you hear me better this way?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm going to stick with this because
You got to mute somewhere.
I'm going to stick with this because now, am I getting feedback that way?
I think you're good.
You're good.
Okay. Last I heard, Dale, you cold crashed it. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's basically it. That's how it came out, nice and clear.
Now, that's not exactly an easy thing to do when you're using a kegerator.
It's a bit of a pain. You got to shuffle some things around, especially when you're a little low on space. I mean, in mine, it's a little full because I've got all the beers up top that I swore I wouldn't buy when I started brewing beer. Because, you know, I'm brewing beer. Why do I need to buy beer? But it's packed full. And then, of course, all my kegs down the bottom.
Okay. An interesting way to do it. What's been the biggest challenge for you through COVID?
Biggest challenge to COVID? I would say getting out into the community to try and reconnect with like other brewers as well. Just because Nova Scotia's been locked down a little harder than kind of the rest of Canada was. So we had a lot more restrictions. Even the brick and mortar store, like if I needed to go in for something locally, sometimes there was a lineup and a wait because they could only allow one person in the store at a time. So that was a bit of a challenge too.
What's been the best thing that's happened, maybe from the beer perspective, through COVID?
Best thing? I would say the beer sometimes, and I don't mean all the time, but the beer sometimes lasts longer. So I'm able to actually see what it tastes like aged.
Okay. It's a common problem with people who do their own wine too. I did a batch of wine with one of my wife's friends, and she comes over to the house a year later, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're getting great at making wine." And I was like, "No, this is the stuff we made last year. It's now drinkable." And she was completely shocked that I had wine from a year ago. So.
Oh yeah, and I guess one of the other things is too is Canada Post is a little slow. So you know when I'm shipping beer to friends and stuff like that to give it a try, you know, it kind of gets a little backed up that way. That was a pain in the ass for COVID.
Yeah, it would be. Canada Post is getting better at it. I know they're not great, but they're getting better at it. So what about Mike wants to know what the homebrew shops are like.
Homebrew shops. The biggest one that I use is Noble Grape. They're fairly good. You gotta know which ones carry grain and hops and things like that, because a lot of them are all just brew your own wine, right? Like there's kits on the wall, you go in, you dump in your packet of yeast and leave. So there's only a few of them that handle grain, and there's you get to kind of know them. I mean, my favorite one is in Dartmouth, Dartmouth Crossing. I go there. Great guy who knows his shit really well, named Daniel, that works there. Him and I usually shoot the shit while I'm in there for a while. I've even taken him in a couple of beers, and he's given me some of his. So it's kind of nice that way. And I think I see, like, he was asking how much they impacted by COVID. Just what I was saying, like, when you would normally go in there on a Friday or a Saturday, people looking, I don't know, I always did brew day on Sunday. I didn't realize it was kind of universal. But you go in on a Saturday and, it'd be popping with several people trying to get their grain, trying to get their hops, packets of yeast that are missing, that kind of thing.
What about the brewery scene down here, like the microbrews and that? How was the impact on them through COVID? Did they change how you were able to get beer from them?
Yeah, actually they did. So a lot of them started doing delivery, and a lot of them actually would even do kind of like province wide. And that was a game changer. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day that, I could just log online, order a bunch of beer, and it shows up at my doorstep like 6 hours later. That was great. But a lot of them did that, and they learned to survive.
Well, other than that, and that now most of them are actually shipping countrywide.
Yeah, there's a select few in Nova Scotia that are doing that. Ontario, I think, is better for that. However, even then, they want minimum orders and things like that. So, unless you're up for drinking $90 worth of beer in one shot, which I know some of us on here, I know some of y'all devils would probably do that in a weekend, but when you got a fridge full already, why push the scales?
Well, Derek, he placed like a $600 order the other day. He was kind of buying for a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, whole bunch.
It was for 12 of us on Beers with Bill. It was $570 from Two Crows. They said it's one of the biggest orders they've ever had. So
a lot of Polynesia.
I don't think we had a bit of Pollyanna.
Or Pollyanna,
yeah.
You are hoping to open up a Nano brewery. Can you explain what that means to people in Ontario?
Okay, so liquor laws and everything are different throughout, obviously because of the governing bodies. My hopes and dream is that if I can get enough people interested by taking some samples and things like that, doing a small bit of investment and looking at possibly doing a nano license. And I always talk to my friend who I brew with, and I basically frame it as, I just want to fucking drink free. Like, that's basically it. Like, if I can get a big enough system and get some 6 barrels that the profit I make off of it pays for my grain bill and everything else that me and him can drink for free, I'd be a happy guy. Like, I'm not looking to be big. It's just, I'm, you know, I'm frugal. I'd like to drink for free.
So what's the difference between a nano and a micro brewery?
Rob posts it, it's 1 barrel. So basically I'm looking at a 1 barrel system or less, so to speak. Once you go across that 1 barrel, that's when they start classifying you as a micro, and then you start going up from there.
Okay. So what your goal is to find enough breweries to buy whatever you're making in that 1 barrel system. So how big a space would you need then to have a nano brewery?
Nano, honestly, it's not that much. I know one brewery out here in Nova Scotia that he's a micro, and he literally is out of a 2-car garage. Like, he retrofitted it, like half of it's got freezer panels and then, you know, an AC system going on in there, and he's got, you know, full size like 5-barrel tanks in his garage and stuff. And I'm just, and then all he does is he opens up the garage door, wheels out like a little cart, and that's his serving cart. And then you sit in picnic tables on his front lawn, and that's his brewery. For me, I'm just kind of looking at basically going like probably like a 1/2-barrel system, and then going from there. And so it won't take up a whole lot of room. Basically, your biggest room taker ups is your fermenter, as well as your system. You know, if you have a 3-vessel system that you're brewing off of, I mean, you got your hot liquor tank, your mash tank, and then you got your boiler. And then from there, your fermenter as well. Easily can be done in a garden shed with power if you want.
Derek's curious, and I didn't have the answer in the back of my head. How much is a barrel? How many liters?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob. Isn't that? I know it's like 340 beers. So that's yeah, 120 liters.
Okay. No, I'm just curious what they consider a barrel, because I mean, for me, a barrel is 205 liters, but that's not how they measure it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird system.
Yeah. So you're looking to do basically a 1/2-barrel system.
Yeah, I would like to find basically like a 30-liter setup or even a 40-liter setup and go from there, because if I can do 40-liter setup, then you can start doing a lot of higher gravity brews, which is something that my friend and I have run into trouble with in the past, where, you know, you want to bump that alcohol content up, and you just need the bigger system, or otherwise you're floating and spilling and everything else. Yeah, Rob called it there. I've practically been on my knees. By the way, that's Rob from Critical Hit Brewing.
Sounds like you and Rob have a great relationship going.
It's what were we called when we worked together? It was Stanler and Woloff. We're kind of the like the Muppets there.
Yeah.
So my next one is an alt beer. So this one here This one here was actually, I crafted the recipe. It was my buddy's idea. We were on a stint brewing some IPAs, and I happened to say to him one day, I was like, I want to do another beer because we're just going through this shit too quick. What should I do? And he kind of hemmed and hawed, and I was honestly waiting for him to say stout because I know he loves stouts. And I kind of had like 4 recipes that I had in the back of my head that I was building for a stout. And out of nowhere, he's like, an alt beer. I'm like, alt beer? Where the fuck did you come up with that? And he's just like, well, they used to do some alt beers around in Nova Scotia before the IPA craze hit. And I've been missing it. I haven't had a good alt beer in a while. So the moment he said that, I thought, okay, pressure's on. Good alt beer. So now I got to craft a recipe for a good alt beer. This is great. So I hit the books, and I mean, when I started crafting my own recipes, I really hit the beer styles guide because I kind of tend to like to stick to traditional, with the exception, as I said, that lawnmower beer that I kind of went off a little bit. So I stuck to the beer styles guide. I hit up some other brewers, looked at some recipes, saw what they did, saw what grains that I had available for it. And then from there, I basically came out with this recipe. This one here, we ended up bottling it just because I wanted to see how it aged. Came out at 5%. It's fairly amber. I poured into a dry glass, so it's got a oversized head on it, but it does have a good retention to it. You get a really good kind of almost malt caramel like on the nose. Yeah, it's Rhine. So the name of it, actually my friend Rob helped me out with the name. I couldn't think of a name for the life of me. And finally he's like, well, it's from the province Rhine. So basically I named it, this is Rhine, it's all Rhine, for the dog and the burning fire. And it kind of suited because I know creating my very first alt beer, it was it got to be a little fun. Not as fun as the next beer, the Scottish one that I'm going to talk about, and wanted to save that for the end. But this is also one of the first beers too that I really worked on my water profile. I had paid to send my water, because I'm on well, I had paid to send my water off for testing, to find out what all the levels were and get a baseline of it. So in that way I can adjust my water profile with different things like lactic acid to bring it down, stuff like that. And what I was going after was beer styles guide, traditional German style water. And that's what I ended up doing. I tried to stick to traditional hops as well. So even the malts, I use Meladonian pale Munich malt, but then for a lot of the hops, I stuck with Hallertauer Mittelfroh, and tried to get that.
So traditionally, an alt beer wouldn't quite have that much head as what you've got on that.
Now I poured into a nice dry glass.
But the head retention is really, really important, especially with alt beers.
Yeah, and as you can see, it's not really going down all that much. It really likes to hang on, but it does give me a nice little lacing on the glass.
That was going to be my next question. The Belgian lacing, you'll have to show them when it's done what that looks like.
Belgian lace. actually, it's funny. The very first beer I ever brewed was a Belgian, and the whole reason behind it. When I came out to Nova Scotia, I know somebody on this call here. Her and I are in the same league where it comes to Belgian beers, and that's what we really love, and it's our heart set on it. And we're not big fans of IPAs at all. Well, if you come to Nova Scotia and you don't like IPAs, you're going to go really, really thirsty. Okay. Like, because that's basically all you can find, with the occasional stout. And, you know, the stouts out here are not a lot to write home about sometimes. So it kind of became one of those pushing motivations to brew my own was, hey, I want a Belgian beer out here. Like I need that fruitiness. I need that nice malt and that sweetness that you get from a good Belgian, and there wasn't any. So that's what I ended up brewing first. And yeah, I always missed the end of my tulip glass or something, getting that nice lace down the side.
Yeah. Mike's curious how the water was after you had it tested.
The water came back fine. Actually, the funny thing is my well water is very close to Munich, Germany. So when I had to do this alt beer, for instance, I added 0.98 grams of baking soda to even it out. So not a lot of change there.
No, not a lot of change. And the water here is a lot softer than it is in Waterloo region, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, like I even when I lived in Stratford there for a while, it was when I put in a brand new water softener, I had to max it out like on the LED panel, and it wouldn't go any higher. And when I was testing the water, it was still coming back, but it was like technically points too hard.
Yeah, Mike's making the comment, water in Cambridge is practically solid, which is true.
But I think this alt beer, Rob, is this one of the better ones I sent you? I think you even wrote back like, shit, that was pretty good. But yeah, so I think my brewing friend there was rather pleased with it anyway. In the end, he asked for an alt beer, he got an alt beer.
Well, that's good. I mean, alt beers are classic styles, malt forward, and a lot of fun to make. That's
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
that malt up front, and then it just drops to a dead bitter at the end. It's
Yeah.
nice. Keeps you coming back for more.
So what type of music you listen to when you brew beer?
Well, that all depends on who gets in hold of the playlist. If it's me, most of the time I listen to hard rock or even classic rock, things like that. My brewing friend, he likes the classic R&B. You know, the 90s, hip hop, R&B, stuff like that. And, yeah, so we're, you know, when you're listening to some rock and roll, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, you flip it up and listen to Biggie Smalls or you know, stuff like that, then that's when you know it's an interesting brew day.
See, he's saying it's Kenny G. It's not that.
Yeah, okay.
You're getting called out.
Yeah, no, Yo-Yo Ma.
Yeah, you could try opera, compromise down the middle.
Oh, yeah, that's complete. Yeah, Yanni. Yeah, totally listening to the Yanni there. Actually, I split the difference in, let's say, just Jethro Tull. You know, you got to get that guitar with the flute going on, and that's the way to boil some wort.
What's your favorite, to pick a restaurant or brewery in the area around you?
Brewery or restaurant? Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh shit. Brewery. I would say I'm kind of stuck. There's either North Brewing because they have a really good restaurant attached, or you can go to Battery Park, which has shit tons of beers on tap, including their own. Or I would say Unfiltered is kind of interesting. He does a lot of good stuff. Yeah, there's Tattamagush Brewing. They do good stuff. The only thing that I've been disappointed with them, excuse me, the last little bit, is when I went there the last time, their flights and everything have gotten smaller, and they stopped handing out corn nuts, which I thought was great. And that, and their growlers are a little smaller, and they try to get away with charging the same amount. So I was kind of, not overly happy with that. But yeah, in the immediate area, I would say that I get to regularly. It would either be Unfiltered or North Brewing. A little bit further out, there's a little tiny shack basically called Uncle Leo's. And Bill, if you can make it to Uncle Leo's, it's worth it. They have a phenomenal red. Like probably, maybe my friend Andrew would argue it. I don't know. I'd say probably one of the best reds in Nova Scotia. But then they also do a nice IPA, and they have a really good stout as well. So but you go in and there's basically a couple of chairs, and that's about it.
Definitely small.
Mm-hmm. Quite small.
I'll see if I can find time to check it out before I head home.
Oh, and for those following along in Ontario, sorry, that's up by New Glasgow. So,
which is in that direction.
Yeah, for me it's that direction actually.
Yeah, which doesn't help them at all, does it?
Nope.
If you could spend a day brewing with anybody, who would it be?
I know some people would think it would probably be like Greg Nash from Unfiltered Brewing, because I mean the guy does some crazy ass shit that I would like to know what the fuck's in his head. And I have met him. It would be hard to tell what the fuck's in that guy's head. He's a little bit crazy, but a great guy. I would say honestly, Rob from Critical Hit, because I could only imagine if we collabed on something and sat there in the brewing thing, we'd probably be piss ass drunk when we brewed it and probably not know what the hell came out and whether it was drinkable or not.
You take it, you're implying
probably before mashing, we'd probably be pretty bad shape.
And then if it was a success, you wouldn't remember how to duplicate it.
No, not at all.
Would you do a barrel program?
Would I do a what? Sorry?
If you go nano, will you do a barrel program where you put beer in a barrel, sit on it for a bit?
Oh my God, I would love to do that. Yes, I would love to do a barrel aged, like even this alt beer. If I could stuff that in a barrel and barrel age that would be great.
So how would that work from a regulation point of view? Would they allow you to do that as a nano?
Yeah, it's all depending on your, like when it comes to nano license, basically here you can't have like kind of like an establishment. Like you got to kind of you can sell growlers only, or you can sell kegs, but you can't really have like a shop over a certain volume. So I mean, as long as I brewed and stuffed it into a barrel and aged it, if I'm not selling it at the same time as something else, then I'm fine. But if I once it came to age and I was tasting it probably regularly, knowing me, and I realized that it was at the time to release, then you know, that's the beer I'd be selling at that point. And, you know, personal consumption, obviously. And shipping to friends, Katie.
So you want to
And
talk
Bill,
about the
and
wee,
Bill, of course, Bill. Yeah.
you want to talk about the wee heavy?
All right, let's break into the wee heavy. So the wee heavy, I wanted to brew a wee heavy because I do love Scottish beer. So that's got nice little head on it going on, quite dark, rich, very malty. Wee heavies were originally a wedding beer for Scotland. If you'll see a lot of Scottish beer, they'll say 60, 80, depending on the level of beer. And what that actually meant was shilling, how much the beer cost. Because the more they put into the beer and the longer they aged it, the higher the cost of the beer would be, things like that. So when you get to a wee heavy, it was usually typically stored for a long time because it was a higher ABV and they brought it out at things like weddings. And then of course, everybody gets rip roaring pissed on it. I like a higher ABV beer. I mean, you know, as I said, my favorite beers are Belgian style. So I'm talking quads, triples, things like that. Like, you know, I'm the guy that sits there at a party, will have one beer while everybody else is pounding back Coors Light or something. And, you know, my one beer is equivalent to like 4 of theirs. So I kind of like something that I can enjoy. I crafted out this recipe and got the grain bill and everything, and my system maxes out at 18 pounds of grain. This was 17 and a half. I don't recommend doing that. I actually errored out my system multiple times because basically like the sediment from the grain and everything will go down and it kind of cakes, and then it crapped out my electric burner in it and caused errors and other kinds of problems. It's called Trashy Scotsman for a reason. And the reason for that, and it's kind of funny, is my friend wanted to give up on it. And much like a child, I wasn't ready to give up on this thing. So it errored out. And what I figured out is we had to scrape the crud off the bottom. We had to get rid of it because it was just going into burn notifications. So we looked around, and the best thing we could find was this Rubbermaid trash can lid, to which was clean, but I washed it, sanitized it, everything else like that, put Star San in the whole thing, dumped it out, and then we had to scoop all this grain out and store it somewhere where I could actually fix the unit for my brewing. And then once it was fixed and all the stuff that was triggering it was caused, put it all back in. We ended up brewing it. We finished it. And the funny thing is like, it does taste all right, but it's kind of gotten weird. I think it oxygenated a little bit out of the fermenter, because certain bottles, I'll crack one and it'll be one of the greatest wee heavies I've had. And then I'll crack another bottle and it's kind of like meh. Which is great, because in a way I was a little worried if it turned out to be the best beer I ever brewed, that I would never be able to recreate that shit show that we had that day ever again, nor would I want to. It was an entire problem right from the end, right from the word go. But in the end, you know, it's a very heavy malt on the nose. You get like a little bit of caramel notes. taste wise, it's definitely got, because it's aged, a boozy character. A slight bit of coffee-ish at the end, but mostly it's very malt forward, and then kind of has like a sweetness on the finish.
It's always fun when your system crashes like that on you.
Oh, yeah, that was not a fun day. My friend just like basically threw up his arms. He walked out of the room. He's like, "We got to throw this out." And I was like, "No, God damn it. We can save it. Throw on the R&B playlist for him and let's get this done."
I see a little bit of bribery, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. Got to bribe him with food and music he likes. And, and then he's all happy.
So that must be a learning lesson for you about grain bills versus the maximum system that you can put it in.
Yeah. So the next biggest grain bill I think I put in, oh man, which one was that? It was my Nova Scotia. I've got a Belgian Dark Ale that I brewed back in, give me a second here, March. And I wanted to age it until fall. So it's been keg aging in my kegerator since March. And that's one that I've got some high hopes on. And it was a 16-pound grain bill. And that's probably the most I'll ever want to do again in that system anyway. Because that was interesting. But nothing like the Trashy Scotsman. We weren't pulling grain out or anything. I could totally recreate it today if I need to. But I am really hoping once I tap the keg, if it's turns out nice, there's going to be a couple of people on here that's going to get a few bottles of that in the mail. So,
Mike is curious if you're ever going to try making the wee heavy again.
yes, on a bigger system.
Okay.
I saved the recipe just because the flavor's there. I think it came out, honestly, I pulled up the beer styles guide. As I said, I pulled up the beer styles judging sheet. And when I tasted it for the first time, it does check off the boxes. I would brew again, but I would be a little bit more careful on not only the system, but I would also be a little bit more careful on the bottling, things like that.
So a lot of dialogue going over in the background on the chat line about the keg management system that you're using.
Oh, yes, the Play-Dohs. Honestly, as Rob just said, the Play-Doh system is amazing. So if you build a keezer or a kegerator, anything like that, honestly, there's a lot of different systems out there. Like there's some where you put a ball in that's got a magnet and then you can see like on the outside, but they get stuck, things like that. The tap list IO integration is good. It just takes you buying basically like a home brewer's license with tap list, and then you get access to the API, and Play-Doh and the API integrate quite well. When it comes to things like the app is fairly rudimentary. I don't know if it will come into focus too well there, but I do get notifications on my phone or my Apple Watch anytime something's been poured. It'll send you temperature alerts. It'll also tell you like, something that could happen in a keezer, for instance, is, you might spring a leak or you might get a lot of water in the bottom. And if it senses water, it'll send you a push notification to your phone that, hey, your shit's flooding, that kind of thing. You can also put one under your CO2 canister. So you can set your CO2 canister on it, because one of the biggest things that you worry about, right, is a leak on your CO2, which can be a little hard to sometimes detect. Well, if you start getting notifications that, your CO2 is going down and you're not pouring, well, then you know you've got yourself a leak, and you can hit it with some Star Sand and start trying to look for bubbles and get that corrected right away. But honestly, yeah, one of my next home build steps is I've got a freezer out in my garage now that I bought. I'm hoping to turn it into a bar style keezer where I'm going to put a bar top. I measured it all out. It'll hold 6 kegs. I want 4 taps, 2 for aging. So I'll have 2 kegs available for aging, 4 for pouring. And then my goal is to basically put a monitor built in that will have my tap list. And then the Play-Doh will display what's on tap, what's left, what the temperature inside the keezer is, what the beer temperature is, all that kind of stuff. Just kind of as a coup d'etat to wanting to own a bar, I guess.
Gonna say you're gonna have to put a big sign out, invite people in, start making some money.
Actually, have you ever, has anybody on here ever heard of the GAR bars? It's really interesting. Look it up. It's GARBAR, so GAR bars. And what they are is they're garage bars. So people like, I know Rob, myself, things like that, what they do is they open a bar in their garage. And how they get around liquor problems is they give it away for free. They work for tips. And a lot of times what those tips can be is, let's say Rob comes over to my house, drinks for free, drinks beer. I go over to his house, I drink for free, drink at his house. And it's actually turned into quite a community thing. It's interesting as hell. It's something that it would be pretty cool to do.
Yeah, eventually the government will figure some way to tax that.
Well, even myself, like I wanted to see, I've been trying to look into Facebook rules, and I haven't been able to find something, because what I would actually like to do is to start a home brewers group where we can exchange growlers. So, I brew something and I've got 5-gallon kegs sitting there in my keezer of, say, an alt beer or something. As much as I like it, I would like other things, so it would be nice to have a Facebook group where I can contact local homebrewers and say, hey, I've got an alt beer, it's 5%, it's this, it's that, willing to trade a growler for, I don't know, a Saison, or something like that. And if somebody reached out and said, yeah, I got 5 gallons of that, I'll trade you up. I want to know if that's legal when it comes to Facebook, because that I think would be a great group, especially out here in the Maritimes, to do. Maybe even different regions like Ontario would probably be huge, but any home brewer, I think that would be fun to do, is just be able to kind of almost do like a beer exchange.
Okay. Have no explanation on that one because I've never explored it from that direction.
I've looked, and the only regulations I can find is don't sell it, which you're trading it. And the only next thing they talk about is marijuana. So I'm not growing the green dream.
You say, get your growler beer and here's some marijuana to go with it.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a dime bag and a growler.
Yeah. I'm getting close to where they're going to be shutting it off that's near me. What would you like all of us to take away from our conversation tonight, Dale?
I'd say the takeaway from this is you never know what you're going to be doing in a year. Enjoy yourself. And you know what? Sometimes when it comes to the Belgian beers that I've brewed here at my house, necessity is the mother of invention, because if you don't like the shit that's around you, then do something about it yourself.
Pretty apt statement. Dale, thank you for taking time out of your schedule and sharing your story with us tonight. Thank all of you for joining in. Rob, great to see you. Andrew, thanks for joining in. And I'm probably going to sign off before I get kicked out of their system. I will let everybody know what next week's show is going to be. I'm still talking to the people at Lund's Mills. I haven't heard a no or a yes. I'm stopping to see them tomorrow. And barring that, there's a tiny little coffee roaster down the road from me, and I'm sure I can convince him to have a conversation with me. You guys all have a good week, and I will let you know what's going to be next week. Dale, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.